They laughed when she used her one phone call. 4 minutes and 30 seconds later, the precinct went silent. This is how a so-called nobody turned a room full of uniforms inside out, not with fury, but with clarity. It starts with breath control, a concrete bench, and a mind that refused to be taken. The door had slammed, and the sound still lived in the metal. The light above her buzzed like a tired insect. Maya Johnson sat with her back straight and counted softly so the words belonged to her and not to them. In, 2, 3. Out, 2, 3, again. In, 2, 3. Out, 2, 3. Every count was a small choice to stay level. Every count was a line she drew for herself. She was 21 and already a third-year law student in an accelerated program that had started when other kids were getting their driver's licenses. She was a certified legal observer. She was not a protester. She was not a chant leader. She was a witness with a vest, a notepad, and a phone in a clear pouch. She believed in the law because she had seen it protect people. She respected the law because she had seen it fail when no one wrote anything down. That morning had felt clean and ordinary. Coffee, 2 pens, a spare battery pack, a printed permit stamped with a time that read 4 o'clock. Her neighbor had tossed her a granola bar and said, "You always forget to eat." And Maya had caught it one-handed and laughed. She texted her dad, "Permitted gathering." "I'm observing. I'll call when I'm done." He answered like he always did. "Keep your head. Don't engage. Your mind is your best tool." She had read the message twice and slid the phone back into the pouch where it would remain visible. The square held 50 people at most. They carried signs about clean water and protecting their town. 2 older residents sat in folding chairs. A mother kept her stroller at the edge so the sidewalk would stay clear. Someone had chalked a line where speakers were supposed to stand. People respected it without reminders. Maya stood off to the side in the neon vest, taking notes on interactions and orders, if any came. She wrote times. She wrote who said what. She wrote where people stood. She wrote things she had learned to write because later someone would say the opposite of what actually happened. For almost an hour, the day felt simple. Voices rose and fell without heat. A student pointed to the permit whenever anyone asked how long they would be there. Boredom in public life is underrated. Boredom sometimes means norms are holding. Then 2 patrol cars rolled to the curb and the air shifted the way it does before a summer storm. Officer Cross stepped out of the first car. He moved like someone who had decided the ending before hearing the story. Officer Bellamy climbed out of the second car, younger, riding the energy that comes from standing next to a bigger presence. Maya marked the time and wrote their names. She was careful about names. Cross lifted his radio and spoke without rush. "Unit on scene. Crowd size approximately 50. Potential obstruction to plaza access." Maya looked at the sidewalk and wrote, "Sidewalk clear. Permit visible. No blockage." Then Cross raised his voice to the square. "All right, folks. Show's over. Clear the area. Failure to disperse is a violation." A college kid, calm and trying to be helpful, held up the laminated permit. "Officer," he said, "we're permitted until 4. We're staying behind the line. In many places, policy says a dispersal order should include the legal basis, the route by which people should leave, and a reasonable chance to comply." None of that came out of Cross's mouth. He moved forward without explaining a route. As he passed the student, his shoulder bumped the young man off balance. The chant wavered. Heads turned toward the officers and away from the signs. Maya stepped to a visible, respectful distance, palms open. "Officer," she said, "I'm a certified legal observer with the Student Law Coalition. I'm here in a nonpartisan role to observe. I'm recording from a public place." Cross's eyes landed on the clear pouch. "You're not in the command structure," he said. "Step back and surrender the recording device." Maya answered without raising her voice. "I'm not interfering. Recording public officials in public space is lawful where I am. I do not consent to a seizure." Bellamy leaned toward Cross and spoke low. "Want me to get the bag?" Cross said. "Secure items." Maya felt the strap lift and bite into her shoulder. "You don't have consent to search my bag," she said. "Inventory contents," Cross told his partner. A heavy casebook landed on the pavement. Her notepad flipped open to time-stamped lines. Cross read one of them aloud in a tone that turned observation into accusation. "Order to disperse not stated." He tore the page. Maya kept her voice steady. "You're damaging my notes." The student called out, "She's not doing anything." Bellamy moved behind her. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Maya complied and said it once, clearly, so it would be on the record later. "I am not resisting." The cuffs clicked. Tight, but she could still feel her hands. She chose to be still. She looked at the crowd and said, "I'm fine," because panic spreads like fire and calm puts it out. "Obstruction and incitement," Cross told his partner as if reading from a form. Bellamy relayed, "One female in custody for obstruction of a lawful order and incitement." Lists sound official. Later, lists meet recordings. The precinct smelled like paper and sanitizer. People moved from task to task. Sergeant Miller looked up with the weary focus of someone married to a desk. "What have we got?" he asked. Cross said, "Subject interfered with crowd control, refused to relinquish a recording device, incited." Miller nodded at Maya. "Name, Maya Johnson. Address, occupation, third-year law student, City University. Certified legal observer." He typed without expression. "You'll get your call after processing." Phone access varies by policy, but the right to counsel endures. Maya chose her battles. "Sergeant," she said, "I'm requesting that you contact your precinct captain and the city legal liaison immediately." Miller glanced up, annoyance a small ripple across still water. "You're not in a position to direct process." Maya kept her tone level. "I'm advising you that you're about to make a serious mistake." He paused over the keyboard. "Are you providing your real name?" "Yes." "If this turns out to be a game," he said, "we'll add providing false identification." Bellamy emptied her property into a tray: wallet, keys, charger, 2 pens. "I'll review before I sign," Maya said. "Please list that pages were torn from my notepad at the scene." Miller's mouth tightened. "You're not running this." "I'm protecting the chain for my materials," she answered. He didn't reply. The fingerprint scanner took her prints on the second try. Miller told the officers, "Put her in holding." "Call in 5, Cross said to Bellamy, almost conversational. "Make it 10. The door closed, and the light hummed, and the bench pressed cold into her legs. She returned to counting, 30 breath sets, then 30 more. When the guard opened the cell and said, "Johnson, your call," she stood without looking at anyone and walked to the phone bolted to the wall near the booking desk. She did not scroll for a contact. She dialed a number that lived in her hands. "Walker," a crisp voice answered. "This is Maya Johnson," she said. "I need to speak with my father." "It's urgent. I'm at the 5th Precinct downtown. Arrested on alleged incitement, obstruction, and resisting. Booking Officer Miller, arresting Officers Cross and Bellamy. They don't believe who I am." There was a half-second of silence. "Stand by," Walker said. A new voice came on the line, calm and edged like a freshly sharpened tool. "Maya, tell me you're not physically injured." "Bruised wrist. Shoulder strained. I'm okay." "Good. We're 2 blocks away for a budget hearing. Say nothing. Sign nothing. We're moving now." "Copy," she said. The line clicked dead. She returned the receiver and went back to the bench. She did not have a clock, so she made one out of breath. In 1 minute, a printer could spit a page and somebody could staple it. In 2, a captain could be found. In 3, a hallway could clear itself of clutter. In 4, doors could open. At 4.5, A room could change posture without anyone saying why. She reached the count and then heard it, a voice cutting across the booking room, authoritative and close. "Where is she?" Miller started. "You can't come back here. This is a secure—" The voice that answered did not rise. "Open the cell." Now the door swung. Special Agent Keeler, investigator with the Attorney General's office, stood in the doorway with 2 state troopers from a nearby detail behind him. Captain Harris arrived in their wake, face drawn, eyes already measuring. Keeler looked at Maya first. "Miss Johnson, are you all right?" "I'm fine," she said. He nodded and turned to the captain. "Captain, your booking officer, Sergeant Miller, and your arresting officers, Cross and Bellamy, office. Now, yes, sir," Harris said. Keeler added to a clerk in a tone that balanced urgency and control. "Start a copy of the CAD timeline. Preserve all shift logs from noon. Hold for case," the clerk said. "Yes, sir." And the room's rhythm changed. Miller stood up. His eyes went to Maya and stayed there. "You weren't lying," he said to himself, as if saying it aloud might undo the last 10 minutes. Cross and Bellamy entered the captain's office with the stiff walk of men who were not yet sure which part of the script they were in. The walls were glass. Sound carried. Keeler spoke evenly. "Officers Cross and Bellamy, I am Special Agent Keeler with the Attorney General's office. I am placing you on immediate administrative suspension pending an investigation into false arrest, battery, unlawful interference with a recording device, and conspiracy to violate civil rights." Bellamy tried first. "Sir, with respect, there was a dispersal." Keeler cut him off without heat. "Was a dispersal order lawfully given with an exit route? Was it audible? Was the reason stated? We have issued a preservation order and begun pulling server-side audio and body-worn video. Interference with that process would be a separate offense." Cross said, smaller now, "She was instigating." Keeler said, "She was observing from a public vantage." Your report language will be compared to the record Miller edged into the doorway, defensive. We process plenty of people who say they're somebody. I followed procedure. Keeler turned his head. You added, providing false identification as a threat despite confirmation steps available at intake. You delayed phone access while mocking a claimed identity. That is not procedure. That is temperament. Harris said quietly, "Sergeant, stop talking." The front doors opened, and a tall man in a dark suit crossed the floor with unhurried purpose. He went straight to Maya, not to the desk, not to the captain. He asked one question in a voice that held the whole room without raising it. "Are you hurt?" "I'm okay," she said. He nodded once and turned. Harris found his words. "Mr. Attorney General, sir." The title landed like thunder. It traveled through the room faster than breath. The man did not smile. He did not scowl. He simply looked at the people who had made choices and let them feel the weight of those choices. "My investigator will handle the details," the Attorney General said to the captain. "You will extend full cooperation." "Yes, Mr. Attorney General," Harris said. The Attorney General rested a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "My daughter and I are leaving." They walked toward the doors past Bellamy, now pale, past Cross, who had fixed his eyes on nothing, past Miller, who sat back down because his legs had asked him to. Outside, the city sounded like a city again. Maya exhaled. "Now what?" she asked. "Now the process," her father said. "We let it do what it is supposed to do, and we watch it until it does." She nodded. She was tired. Her wrist ached. She was steady. "If you want to know what happens next, it begins with an administrative investigation. That process checks policy compliance, report accuracy, supervisory oversight. It is not theatrical. It asks tedious questions and compares what people wrote to what video shows. It maps where training existed and where it did not, what guidance was given for public assemblies, what was said at roll call, and what the plan required that practice ignored. Alongside that, evidence is preserved and cataloged. A preservation order secures server-side media. Body-worn cameras and dispatch audio are time-stamped and matched. Chain of custody is logged, so every hand is accountable. If a clip is missing, the missing part becomes its own fact with its own consequences. A timeline is built. The timeline does not argue. It arranges the events and asks everyone to live with the order it reveals. If facts support it, criminal exposure is considered. Battery, unlawful interference with lawful recording, conspiracy to violate civil rights. Elements are boxes filled by conduct, not by tone. The same conduct may open a civil track that runs on a different timetable with a different burden of proof. A person can face no criminal charge and still owe civil remedies because the questions asked in those lanes are not the same. Inside the administrative lane, officers may have representation. A union representative can be present. A garrity warning can protect statements compelled for internal purposes from being used in a criminal case. None of that ends the inquiry. It only frames which statements go where and how they may be weighed. If misconduct is sustained, outcomes vary. Sometimes it is retraining or a formal letter. Sometimes it is suspension or loss of pay. Sometimes it is decertification, which shadows an officer into every courtroom because credibility is a tool that breaks when misused. In some jurisdictions, there are Brady and Giglio lists that track credibility issues so that prosecutors disclose them and defense attorneys prepare for them. Those lists are not vengeance. They are housekeeping for truth. Public records laws bring sunlight where they are allowed to. Summaries are released. Community briefings translate careful writing into plain speech. People listening do not hear footnotes. They hear whether an agency says, "We were wrong," or "We were right," and they decide whether to trust the next briefing based on how this one sounds. Agencies that take discipline seriously treat findings as maps. They brief trainers. They update checklists. They change scenarios at the academy so ambiguity cannot hide in the same corner twice. They measure whether the change holds when the next hard day arrives. A few loose threads matter here. Providing false identification sounds official, and sometimes it is accurate. It is also sometimes a cudgel used when patience runs out. One phone call is a phrase that lives in television more than in statutes. Access to a phone can come earlier or later depending on the place and the policy. The right to counsel is the constant that matters. This story is a dramatization, and rights vary by jurisdiction. Learn the rules where you live before a crisis, not after one. People will ask about Maya's age. Yes, a 21-year-old can be a third-year law student on the right accelerated track. She started college at 16, worked while her friends were learning to merge on the freeway, and entered a program that braided undergraduate and legal study. She did not stumble into that vest. She earned it and then chose to wear it. People will also ask about tone. It is easy to make villains louder than life, so no one has to think. Real rooms are quieter and more complicated. Cross was not a monster. He was a man who let pride wear the uniform of certainty. Bellamy borrowed that certainty because it looked like a ladder he could climb. Miller let fatigue make decisions. Harris arrived to find a fire he did not expect and chose to put water on it instead of gasoline. Keeler did not shout. He asked for logs and timelines. He respected clocks. He made the room respect them too. If you had one call, who would you make it to? And why? The question is not about power for power's sake. It is about proximity, readiness, and accountability. Sometimes the person you call is 2 blocks away because a budget meeting ran long. Sometimes the person you call is across town and can only tell you to breathe and say nothing until they arrive. Sometimes the person you call is a friend who will sit outside a door so you are not alone. Titles may open doors, but principles keep them open. They laughed when Maya used her call. 4 minutes and 30 seconds later, the room changed shape. Not because a title walked in, though a title did walk in, but because a record had started before that arrival and the record refused to lie. The things that were said would meet the things that were done. The tape would meet the report. The notes would meet the narrative that tried to swallow them. Calm bought her clarity. Clarity wrote the record. And the record, stubborn and patient, did what a righteous anger often cannot do by itself. It told the truth in order. If this story leaves you with anything, let it be simple. Breathe, state the facts, protect the record, and know your number. 4 minutes can reshape a room. Half a minute more can change how everyone remembers it.